Still in the midst of full-on recruiting season. Some SEC teams are really starting to make some waves. We'll tell you who. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into a crossover edition of Locked On SEC, Locked On, the portal with Brian Smith. He's covering all things recruiting. And I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And Brian, been loving these weekly segments with you because there's been so much happening. It's so funny. Like, as soon as we finish recording, I see this kid's committed. This kid's committed. I mean, it's just like the SEC names just start dropping like flies. And so we got a lot to digest. But before we get into that, we'll get into that next segment. Here, I wanted to talk to you about the monumental, announcement that was made just a week ago, in that the NCAA and House settlement has gone through, where the revenue sharing is going to happen between schools and players. But as we started getting into this throughout the week, Brian, we started looking at it saying, okay, well, $20 million for all athletics. So about 13 to 16 is going to go to football, and roster limits, you're going to be at 105. And I started doing the math. I'm going, that's not a ton of money to pay a lot of these big name players. And so the more I started to look into it, it's like, well, NIL is still going to be the big, determining factor on the highest paid players and all this kind of stuff. So give me your initial thoughts when you saw all this go down. How does this affect the world of recruiting?
Well, there's two parts to it. Number one, most of the money that you're talking about there, the 20.5 overall, and it's for the athletic department, that's run from inside the building. That's not even going to be remotely enough for the Bamas, Texas, LSU, those kind of programs. That's where your big collectives come into play and your donations and all that. And it's also where this thing, anytime I hear this word, it gives me kind of a nervous feeling. Clearinghouse. There's a clearinghouse for any deal. Repeat, any deal by any of these collectives that goes over $600. By the way, Chris, all of them are going to go over $600 for football, basketball. Like even for like some of the women's, like $600 is not much to clear. So this clearinghouse is going to do it. How do you determine somebody's value? Because that's one of the things they're going to look at. They're going to get sued to the ends of the earth on that, 100%. And there's also the issue of the following. Let's say LSU, Texas, and Ole Miss are competing for a recruit, and 2 out of any of those 3 that you want, their deals have been cleared. But it's down to the wire, signing days the next day, and they haven't heard back from the clearinghouse for the other one. How does that work? Because like if one guy gets it nixed and they lose out on a 5-star kid, do you think Brian Kelly's going to sit around, or is he going to be on the phone? Like these, and it has to be fast. And they're going to have hundreds and hundreds of these deals coming in. There's no way. It's a terrible idea. So they're going to get sued, and coaches are going to be angry. It's not going to go well.
Well, not only that, Brian, but I look at, okay, let's just say then they're determining fair market value. And I did see a quote that said, based on what they've at least looked at, I think ACC officials looked at, 90% of deals that were done as NIL deals last year would be approved under this new, regime, that they think most of them are on the up and up. Like if Tom's Tire Shop comes along and says, we'll give you $300,000, but we want you to come do an hour autograph signing. We want you to do a TV commercial for us. We want you to do social posts. Like, you can figure all that out. But my question is, on the flip side, what if the kid doesn't do those things? Who can hold him to that standard? You know what I mean? Like, does the school sue him? I mean, we just saw it with Nico's little brother at Arkansas. Like, that's another part of this.
That is a fantastic question. It's a double-edged sword if you're the institution, because you don't want to tick off the booster or the collective that's a part of that. They want to be compensated for the money they used. That's fair. But on the other side, any way, shape, or form that you go after a recruit, I can tell you from firsthand experience, that does, even if the kid's in the wrong, that generally doesn't go well for recruiting that area ever again with that staff. So if it's at a certain high school, et cetera, that gets very touchy. And on the other side, too, the NCAA, the clearinghouse, they're going to want the kids to do what they're supposed to. So it's the school gets left right in the middle. That's really awkward. I'm sure that's going to happen, and we're going to talk about it. I'm glad I don't have to be the one to make that decision on how you handle it, because I don't have an answer for you. That's going to happen, though. You're 100% right to bring it up.
The other thing that they said 90% of current NIL deals would be okay. 70% of deals through collectives would not. And this is where we get into the Bryce Underwood thing of the big money booster comes along and goes, hey, just write the kid a check. They funnel it through the collective and bing, bang, boom, the kid's in the school. Well, that can't happen anymore. The whole idea of this is the NCAA, Charlie Baker, they want to wrangle in these backdoor deals and say, no, look, if it's NIL, it's got to be real NIL. But I mean, Brian, this just feels like to me, we're going to go back to the old days of duffel bags of cash and backdoor handshakes because, again, we had let it all out in the open, but now that you're blocking it as if big money boosters are going to go, well, that's it. Unless I own a business and I sign the kid to an NIL deal, I just can't give them my money.
Do you really think the guy, and I forget his name, that is the billionaire for Texas Tech is going to put his cash in his wallet? Do you really think that any booster for Bama or Georgia that's competing for a 5-star defensive tackle is going to shut his mouth, not use his cell phone to get around it? Do you really think that Phil Knight at Oregon's going to get – it's a joke is what you're saying, and you're right. You beat me to it. They will not. Rich people in general, football or not, they're not going to be told what to do with their money. They're not. And if they have to go around it, they will. And if you mess with them, I guarantee you their lawyers will also come after you in some way, shape, or form. And this is involved with Congress and all kinds of stuff. It's literally politics. So it is very convoluted. And I, again, don't know what the answer to that is because the name of the game is advantage. These schools want no part of parity. Do you think Texas fans want to go back to being mediocre? They're now towards the top of the sport. They don't care how the kid gets on campus. Let's not kid ourselves. Do you think Ole Miss cares that they're just barely on the door? No, they want that extra player to get to the Alabama, Texas level. If some booster buys it, they don't care. So yeah, you're right. There is no fairness, and they're trying to pitch it like, okay, we've got this figured out. You're never going to keep Big Daddy Booster completely out of it. Never, ever, ever going to happen.
Cody Campbell was the guy you were trying to think of. Texas Tech. And here's the other thing too, Brian, is this is where really business comes into play, because if you're a rich booster, but you own a business, let's just say you own a law firm, you can sign that kid to an NIL deal and say, he's going to do commercials for me. He's going to do all this. And that's you as a booster, but signing a legit NIL deal. The ones that get me though are like, if you work in stocks, you can't sign a kid to your money, you don't own a business, so you can't theoretically sign him to an NIL deal. So that's where it just gets really interesting. It's like for LSU, the CEO, Todd Graves, who runs Raising Cane's, he can sign LSU kids all day he wants to Raising Cane's deals. But if you're just if you own an oil company, I don't know how you sign an NIL deal with a kid with oil and gas, unless it's like Shell and he's going to promote gasoline or something. But that's where it just gets, again, it's just, when I start unraveling the layers of this, I start to see you got to have a legit business that you can do a legit NIL deal with. But again, it's got to go through the clearinghouse. If you go, I'm giving this kid $3 million for an NIL deal, they're going to go, that's not fair market value.
There's some of that I've wondered about too. Certain businesses don't make sense. Car dealerships are probably about the easiest. Messiah Hampton is a kid from upstate New York. It's got offers from everybody. He already did a car dealership deal, and I saw the ad. But a lot of these things, if a local drugstore wants to sponsor a kid, what are you going to have him do? Stand in front of the vitamins and talk? I mean, it's weird. I don't know. Remember a couple of years ago, the quarterback from Georgia was at a drive-through. It might have been Raising Cane. It was one of those, after they won the title at Georgia. There's little things that you can do, but a lot of it's just got to be them signing autographs and showing up and shaking hands. They're not ready for those roles. So if somebody wants to do an oil and gas deal, I want to see that. I'm interested to see what they come up with, because I'm not sold that it's going to meet the criteria. But at the same time, that goes back to how much is this kid worth? Just him standing at the front desk. If you're the quarterback at LSU, what is that worth to your business? Can you imagine? If you're in Baton Rouge, or if you're in Lafayette, or if you're in New Orleans, that you can't put a price tag on it. And you're going to try to tell me you're going to limit what that kid's worth? Same thing, kid in Austin. Can you imagine what Arch Manning's worth to stand at a car lot for a half hour? There's no way you can put a price tag on that. So
you would cause massive traffic jams if Arch Manning is at a car dealership and you announce that. I mean, that's the reality.
100%.
One thing to add here, though, Pete Nakos talked about this earlier this week, and this is what really gets fascinating to me in this evolution of NIL and, paying players, is he said a lot of it is about experiences, and maybe it's not so much about the cash. He said kids are largely saying they want cars, which you can basically loan them, lease them, to aviation. They all want, I mean, we saw it the last couple of years, kids are signing private jet, things like you could basically say like, well, we got this booster who owns a private jet company. He can do an NIL deal with you. And then the other one is real estate. They said kids want if you own an apartment complex or a condo, could you lease the condo to the play, so that just gets really fascinating to me because that's not cash per se, but like experiences and ownership of things that's kind of where these kids are thinking. And you think big picture brand, like I want real estate, I want this, I want a private jet, like all that kind of stuff. It sounds insane, but like to me, that's better than giving the kid $2 million.
I agree. And they learn business. You go to school to get better at life, to learn about how to handle things. And being around those people is probably going to be good too, just by osmosis. I think that's really good. So the real estate I like in general. Lord only knows property's gone up exponentially in my lifetime. So some of these young people never have to make a mortgage payment. Thumbs up. And even if they just get an apartment for their parents while they're at that school to help, there's all kinds of little places can do. So why not? If you're an SEC school like Tennessee and they have apartments that somebody owns within 3 miles of the stadium, maybe they rent it to the kid like as part of a deal. That's fine. And their dad and their mom and their sister, blah, 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 get to go to all the games for free. You could put that in. You could do little things like that too. I'm hoping people are smart enough to do a bunch of those because that's just easy for everybody. It's a winner for everybody involved. Yeah, that would be awesome. I
think every athletic department needs to be partnering with aviation companies now, though. Finding, hey, we need a private jet. And wouldn't that be funny? The star quarterback has a private jet. He could take wherever he wants. But the O-line coach going to recruit a lineman has to fly commercial. There's something off about that picture. But
it is.
Anyway, we will talk more with our buddy Brian Smith. We'll get into some of the names that are picking their schools. We'll touch on that coming up next here on Crossover Edition, Locked On SEC and the Portal. But first, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at Monarch Money. And look, if you've ever checked your bank account and wondered where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're going to be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money, they're not just a budgeting app. It's going to be a complete financial command center for you. You can track all your accounts, all your investments, all your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. When you start using Monarch, you're going to realize just how much you're spending on food delivery services, on all those streaming services. It's going to make you want to budget smarter and save more. And, you won't have to juggle apps. You don't have to go to this app and that app and that. It's going to link everything together, and you'll be able to use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even start planning some long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. Get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, we continue on here, a crossover edition of Locked On SEC and the Portal with our Locked On recruiting insider, Brian Smith. And Brian, before we get into some of the names that made their announcements this week, I did see, it seems to be a growing trend. I'm seeing more and more kids use the words shutting down my recruitment. I don't know where this came from, but it does feel like in this day and age of NIL and all this, what is with all the kids going, I am officially announcing I am shutting down my recruitment?
I think a lot of the schools are tired of kids using them as a propaganda machine. They committed, and then other schools come in, they just use them for leverage. So now if you're going to get that NIL deal, part of it is you got to shut it down. I think it's even part of the language of some of these NIL deals. I don't know if that's legal with this clearinghouse thing that's coming up, by the way. I don't know if that's legal, but I've been told a few schools have done that. But how that got started with the wording, that I don't know. But yeah, I've seen it quite a bit too, Chris. And I'm okay with it because a lot of these kids jump around school to school like they're frogs. They just hop around on the lily pads, and it's LSU to Texas to Ole Miss and everywhere else. It's pretty wild.
Well, it used to be. It was like, even if a kid said, I've shut down my recruitment until signing day and that fax came in, you still didn't know, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
you could say you've shut it down all you want. We still, until that signature's on that piece of paper, we don't know if you've shut it down. So that's just a fun one that'll play out. Let's jump into it. Some big names added this week. I want to start with Georgia. And this is a whole nother thing we'll get into, the rankings, how they differ on the two big ones, the 24/7 Sports Composite and the On3 industry rankings. There is a big discrepancy on a lot of classes we'll get to here. But Georgia, they're ranked number 5 in both groups. They beat out Alabama for a highly touted O-lineman. Zykie Helton is his name. Had offers from Florida State, Colorado, Miami, and others. But number 41 interior O-lineman. Georgia now 14 commitments in the class of 2026. And it just jumps up, Ryan, because they're number 5 and they only got 14 kids in this class.
Yeah, On3 does their rankings a lot differently based on the top like 10 to 15 kids. And like you said, Georgia's class isn't massive yet, but they've got a lot of high-end players. So that's why they're high on both those systems. Helton's a kid that's probably going to play center or guard. He's a kid from Carrollton, and he's just kind of par for the course. All of these kids are good. He's probably not even one of the top 5 or 6 kids, and he had offers from across the SEC. But Georgia is trending. This weekend, they got Tyler Atkinson coming in, maybe the best linebacker in the country. Derek Cooper, maybe the best running back in the country. Jarrett Curtis will be back on campus. Brett Colajay, arguably the best interior offensive lineman. He's from IMG. Georgia's got a chance to make a move. And we said this the last time I was on the show. If Georgia finishes what's one of the top 3 classes, is anybody going to be surprised? Right. No. If you are, that's on you. Okay, that's not on Chris Gordy or Brian Smith. I can assure you, we will not be surprised. So they've got an elite list of kids, and they don't slow down. Like, they are so consistent at Georgia with how they operate. This is par for the course. So they'll end with 23 kids, and every one of them will be SEC worthy.
Another one, Texas A&M sitting top 7 in both rankings, number 7 on 24/7, number 6 and On3, and they pick up a couple of names. DB Chance Collins out of Mansfield, Texas, 6'3", 195 pounds, and then a 4-star wide receiver in Aaron Gregory, 6'3", 170 pounds out of Douglasville, Georgia. I mean, that's 14 pledges already for Elko's bunch and sitting top 7 in the country. I mean, they are doing some work there at A&M.
A&M's class has been unusual. Gregory's a kid that committed a long time ago, and he's like, I guess he shut it down. I talked to him recently at the Rivals camp in Atlanta. But they've recruited Georgia, California, Florida, New Jersey, all over the place. But now they've got to win to get into that top 5. They've got to beat Texas and Notre Dame and Michigan and LSU for a bunch of the in-state kids left. The Aggies, nobody talks about them, but they're in the mix for everybody in that state. It's really interesting. Elko staff's done a great job. It's just been unorthodox. Usually they get out of their first 15 commits, like 12 or 13 will be from the Lone Star State. It's backwards this year. But now it's time for the rubber to meet the road. Can you knock off the Horns, the Tigers, stuff like that? Can you consistently do that? If they do, they're a team that could end up in the top 5. They've got a really good class. So congrats to Elko. That's trending in the right direction. Absolutely.
Another school we haven't talked a bunch about recently, Tennessee and Josh Heupel. They've done a good job. They just picked up a defensive back in KJ McLean out of the New Jersey area. But the number 30 class on 24/7, but the number 12 class in On3. And obviously, Faison Brandon, the big quarterback from the North Carolina area, is a big reason why. But what stands out to me, Brian, is, number 12 in the On3 rankings, only 9 commits so far. Again, Josh Heupel, if they continue to add this class, should end up in the top 10.
They are looking for quality, and they've been very patient. He's taken a Nick Saban approach to this. A lot of times Saban's classes started slow, but he knew the kids that he wanted were up here, and those kids wait longer. The Vols were fortunate. They've had Brandon committed for a very long time. Can they get somebody else to kind of jump in the boat with him consistently? They've done a good job. But they're in on a bunch of guys in Atlanta, in Virginia. They need to find out over the next 2 weeks. They've got several kids coming into campus. Again, if Tennessee ends up with a top class, would it shock anybody? I'm sure it's not hard to get receivers and tight ends to go, hey, we got this phase on Brandon guy. Do you want to come play with the future first round quarterback? That's probably not hard. And their offense is explosive. So I think they'll do pretty well. And they're not getting talked about enough because, like you said, they don't have a ton of guys committed. But go look at their visit list. It's really good. They've got a chance to be one of the best classes in the country.
We talked about how Alabama was a little bit behind the curve here, and they're starting to pick up some steam.
Oh.
They pick up 4-star O-lineman Sam Utu this week, number 11 interior offensive lineman, and then an edge in Kamarian Johnson, number 33 edge in this class of 2026. 6 players so far for Alabama. And again, you know, the discrepancy in rankings, Brian, Alabama ranks 50th in 24/7. They are number 9 in the On3 industry rankings. So 50th and top 10, pretty big discrepancy there.
Again, On3 does it based on who's going to be visiting, who they're trending with, and the quality of the top guys. All the guys they've got committed are really good. And they're trending for C.D. Morgan, arguably the best receiver in the country, 6'5", 215-pound kid for inside the state. Anthony Jones, maybe the best defensive end in the state. Last year, they didn't really pursue the in-state kids. Out of the top 10 or so, they're probably going to get 6 or 7 at least. Xavier Crowell, the running back out of Jackson, maybe the best running back in the Deep South that reclassed, and he's just a burner. They're trending for him too. And then they're doing pretty well in Georgia and Florida, etc. Alabama's class has a chance to be top 3. This if it ends with Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, don't be surprised. And I know that won't surprise you, but Ohio State's the one that probably recruits the most like the SEC outside of the Southeastern Conference. Those would be my picks. Texas would be the other one. But Bama's just taking their time, bringing in the visits from all over the country. Kalen DeBoer's crew's done an excellent job of lining up the visits, especially this weekend. Their list is really good. I mean, just a few of the kids. Jair Edwards, they just got a Steve Wiltfong bomb for number 1 safety in the country. He's out of Baltimore. Elijah Golden's going to be coming in, one of their top D linemen out of the state of Florida. Alabama's going to have a different list when we talk next week. I guarantee it.
All right, we'll touch on a little bit more when we come back here on more on Locked On SEC, Locked On Portal crossover edition here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC, Locked On, or the Portal with Brian Smith, a crossover edition. Brian, I want to jump to Florida because Billy Napier been doing some work. We said it a few weeks ago. What are they doing? They got to do some work down there in Gainesville. They pick up a big-time old lineman in Chancellor Campbell, 6'8", 307 pounds rather, 3-star prospect, and then also a tight end in Kakua Amua from IMG, number 35 tight end. So starting to get a little momentum here for Billy Napier and company.
I actually had just put up a post recently about Florida is trending more than any other school, and it's ironic compared to where they were 2 weeks ago. There are 4 or 5 guys that I think they're going to get over the next week. Carson Baker, one of the top running backs out of Georgia. I think they're also going to get J. Raylan McCoy out of Mississippi, a defensive lineman. There's a couple other kids in the Florida, Georgia area they're trending with. DQ Forkba, another kid out of IMG, a linebacker. They're probably number 1 for him. I don't know what happened. They went from 1 commit to they could be at like 12 to 15 by early July. Their recruiting run they could go on is quite exceptional. And I know it's easy to sell Florida, but you got to give their staff credit. They lined up a bunch of great visits, and apparently it's going very well. So props to them, especially coming off a season that was so up and down last year. They needed the recruiting momentum, and they've done it. A few of the other kids, they got Isaiah Williams is coming back to campus this weekend. The kid committed to Ole Miss. They've got Kendall Gravel, the defensive lineman for Fort Myers that Texas wants, that Miami wants, everybody wants. Caden Prothro, maybe the best flex tight end in the country out of Georgia, is going to be on campus this weekend. They have an elite list. Florida is going to be a program that everybody's talking about coming next week.
A few more quick hitters here for you. Texas, they picked up wide receiver Cohen Brown from Waxahachie, Texas, and there's Texas sitting around 13, 14 in the rankings. They were number 1 this past year, but feels like Sark. I mean, they're a lock to be top 10, right?
Top 10 would be a very low bar for them. If they don't finish in the top 7 or 8, I'll be shocked. they've done a better job this year so far, honestly, recruiting from a national perspective than they even did last year. And let's be honest, they're not going to miss on a whole bunch of their top targets inside the Lone Star State. That's a very well-run operation, and they've got an incredible visit list. And the Brown kid you just mentioned, they got in on him late, and he can fly. He's an absolute speedster. It's hard to turn down Texas if you're a wide receiver in that offense. I get it. So look for them to really rack up some offensive talent. Question will be defensive linemen. They're trying to get a couple kids out of the state of Florida. Johnson, the kid Gravel I just mentioned a minute ago with the Gators. And there are a few other kids out that area that they're trying to get. That's harder, but they got in on guys earlier this year. Don't be surprised if you look at their list on National Signing Day, and it's a little broader than normal, but top 7's conservative. Top 5 is pretty good bet too.
Yeah, Cohen Brown and Chris Stewart, 2 wide receivers in that class that are looking at Arch Manning and all the projections of him coming back to school in 2026 going, oh, yeah, I'll go play with Arch. How about LSU? They're sitting at number 2 in the on-3 industry rankings, but Bo Bentley, the big-time quarterback, is down to LSU and Oklahoma. I know he had his visit at Oklahoma this past week. Are you hearing anything on that front? To me, this almost feels like LSU, with no quarterback in this class, has to get Bo Bentley.
They've went after a lot of guys, and for whatever reason, it hasn't happened for them. I really don't know why. But if they don't, I'm curious to see what they do and who they would trend towards. But you're right. It is kind of unusual, but we'll see. Bentley will make his decision when he's ready, but Oklahoma or the Bayou Bengals. The good news for them is they're trending with a lot more linemen this year, and they've got Darius Gray on campus this coming weekend. He's the number 1 interior lineman by 24/7 out of Virginia. He's a kid that grew up an LSU fan. Do not be surprised if he's their next commitment. And they also have several defensive linemen and offensive linemen on campus in general. 6'4", 290 pounds, Emmanuel Ruffin out of Bessemer City, Alabama. They got Darius McKinley. His brother, of course, is at LSU. He's a kid from Acadiana in Louisiana. They got all these guys coming in. Look for LSU to jump up the rankings because they got the really good players coming on the June 13th weekend.
A couple more. We'll just go rapid fire here. Auburn, they pick up a quarterback in Eric Perry from the state of Mississippi. What are they getting in him?
Well, he's a quarterback in high school that's going to play tailback in college. He plays in a basic hand me the ball and I'm just going to make a decision offense in high school. He runs about 5 plays. Nobody had offered him. It's a great story. This is a kid that ran the football in every direction from the quarterback position, but Auburn was his only offer. And it's a great story, great film too. Kind of plays at a school that doesn't get a lot of attention. And I think he's a guy that will fit in well. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds, and he's put together. Got a lot of speed.
Mizzou starting to add to their class. They pick up a tight end, Isaac Jensen from the Nebraska area, but then a 4-star wide receiver, Jabari Brady from down in Florida. And feels like Eli Drinkwitz, man. He's getting these wide receivers, a big-time wide receiver every year, it feels like.
Jabari Brady, I met when he's a freshman, and his hands were already bigger than mine. He was one of those kids, real long. He's 6'2", 205, and looks like from the neck down, he looks like he's 25 years old. So he's physically put together. He's been that way since he was a sophomore. He's a freaky athlete, big pickup. And the tight end they get is a kid basically out of Omaha, right down the road from Nebraska. That's not normal for Missouri. They're stealing some kids from some tough places. I think Missouri has really trended up, and good for them.
Oklahoma, they get a DB in Derek Johnson, and they got 10 verbal commitments already. Number 21 in the on-3 industry rankings, but this just feels like Brent Venables, man. He's got to have a good season on the field this year, but got to keep recruiting and getting some top recruits in this class.
Yeah, they got such a tough schedule. Part of the way to keep your job is to show promise for the future, and they're in on a ton of kids, even some Florida kids, Georgia kids, etc. They're in on Trenton Henderson, arguably the best pass rusher in the state of Florida. They could end up with a much better class than people think, but your point about the season matters. They need to get the kids now, but they also need to keep working and maybe flip some other kids later this year, as well as solidify their class, because he's on the hot seat. They don't like 6 wins in Norman very much. This much I know for sure. So we'll see what they do. With the next couple of weeks are really important for the Sooners as they have some big visits.
Last one for you, Brian. South Carolina, I saw they had a 4-star DB commit in Peyton Dyer that decommitted from South Carolina and committed to Southern Cal and posted on social media. So now I'm part of the real USC. It feels a little bit like this day and age, especially with the portal and everything. don't take shots. Like taking shots, you burn bridges, and you want to leave all opportunities open. You don't know. Maybe the Trojans kick you to the curb, and the Gamecocks are the only ones offering you a year from now. So that just feels dangerous to me.
Probably in hindsight, 10 years from now, he will regret that decision, regardless of how his Southern California career goes. But you're right. That's not the best decision. He's the kid out of Duluth, if I remember correctly. He could play. He had a bunch of offers. I don't know what you say if you're a USC fan in the Southeastern Conference, but good riddance. We got rid of the immature kid, maybe. But South Carolina's class is still trending too. They're in on a bunch of kids. This is a really important 10 or 15-day stretch for them. They're competing with Clemson and Georgia and Florida State, Florida for a lot of kids. They need to win some of those battles that some of the people don't think they will. And that's how you continue to move up the ladder. They almost made the playoff last year, but they had just like 3-4 more players. Maybe they'd have went 10-2 instead of 9-3, and they'd have made the playoff.
He is Brian Smith, of course, host of The Portal. And if you're watching Locked On SEC, make The Portal your second listen. If you're watching The Portal, make Locked On SEC your second listen. And we got you covered talking all things recruiting. It's been a fun series talking recruiting every week. We'll do it again next week with our buddy Brian Smith. Check out The Portal. Check out Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys next week right here on our shows.